Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into the world of Bitcoin. You've probably heard Bitcoin just broke $100,000, a price that has everyone talking. Is this just a quick jump or the start of something bigger for crypto? Well, to figure that out, we've got a recent news article that breaks down this price surge. And we've also got our expert here to make sense of it all. So first off, how big of a deal is this?
Oh, it's huge. Breaking $100,000. It really feels like a turning point in how Bitcoin is seen by the world. It's not this fringe asset anymore. It feels much more well established.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's more than hype, but what's actually pushing the price up like this?
Yeah.
I remember a time when Wall Street wouldn't even look at Bitcoin. And now we've got these ETFs loaded up with Bitcoin worth like over $100 billion.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? Wall Street has done a complete 180 on this. And that change is a big deal. And when you combine that with the US getting clearer on regulations, well, suddenly Bitcoin seems like a safer bet for these big investors. So we've got more mainstream acceptance, easier ways to invest. But there's also this thing that everyone's talking about, the Bitcoin halving. Every time it happens, the price goes crazy. Can you explain what this halving thing actually is and why it affects the price so much?
Okay, so imagine a faucet that controls how much new Bitcoin is created. Every 4 years, that faucet gets tightened, cutting the rate of new Bitcoin in half. This is what we call the halving. Now, think about basic economics, supply and demand. When you limit supply and demand stays strong, prices go up. It's like a rare stamp or limited edition sneakers. Everyone wants them even more.
So that's why people get excited about the halving. They're expecting the price to just explode. But I'm also seeing all these warnings about how risky Bitcoin is. Like every time it hits a new high, it could come crashing down.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about Bitcoin. It has incredible potential for growth. But it's also had these crazy price swings in the past. Remember back in 2021, it got close to 70,000, then plummeted to like 20,000. This pattern has happened before.
Yeah, that's a scary drop for sure. So it makes you wonder, is this time different? Is there something about this surge that makes it seem, I don't know, more sustainable?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is complicated. There are a few factors this time that suggest we might be seeing Bitcoin become more stable.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are these factors that have people thinking this time is different?
Well, let's start with just how much money is flowing into Bitcoin. From these big institutional investors, we're talking pension funds, hedge funds, even major corporations, they're putting serious money into Bitcoin. And these aren't your everyday traders hopping in and out of the market.
So it's not just the tech folks anymore, it's the big players getting into the game. So what does that mean for the average person who might be a little hesitant to invest in something like Bitcoin with all this volatility?
It's a sign for sure. These institutions are less likely to panic and sell if the price drops a bit. They see Bitcoin as a long-term thing, maybe even a way to protect against inflation. And when you see the big players doing this, people start to pay attention. Bitcoin starts to feel like a legitimate part of the financial system.
That's a good point. And it's not just companies, right? Didn't El Salvador and Bhutan make Bitcoin their official currency?
You're right. Countries adopting Bitcoin is a whole new element to this. It might make the system more stable. But it also creates its own set of problems.
So it sounds like we've got a lot going on here, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. It sounds like while Bitcoin has been known for being volatile, there are signs that this time really could be different. How different exactly? That's what we'll dig into next.
Definitely a complex landscape. But let's unpack what could make this surge different. One major factor is the type of institutional investment we're seeing. In the past, it was mostly funds specifically focused on crypto. Now we've got giants like BlackRock and Fidelity offering Bitcoin to their clients.
So these are the big names in traditional finance, not just those dipping their toes into crypto.
Exactly. They're bringing a level of access and legitimacy that didn't exist before. Now, it's not if institutions will adopt Bitcoin, it's how they'll do it.
Okay, that makes sense. And that brings us to another interesting part of all this. Countries like El Salvador and Bhutan making Bitcoin their official money. That's a huge leap. What's the reasoning behind that? And how does it affect this whole stability thing we're talking about?
It's a gamble for sure, but there are a few reasons why they might do it. For some countries, it's about financial independence, not being so reliant on the US dollar or international banks. For others, it's about attracting tech investment and showing their forward thinking.
Right. So potential economic benefits, but also a big risk. How does this all tie back to Bitcoin being less volatile this time around?
Well, the idea is if you have all sorts of players holding Bitcoin, From individual investors to huge institutions to entire countries, it creates a more robust market that's less reactive.
So like a safety net. More players mean a single sell-off won't tank the price.
Yeah, that's the theory. Of course, we've never seen this level of adoption before, so in many ways it's still an experiment, but the early signs are positive. Just look at the current Bitcoin cycle compared to previous ones.
Okay, let's talk numbers. What are we seeing with Bitcoin's market cap, and how does that fit into all of this?
Right now, Bitcoin's market cap ranks it as the 7th largest asset globally. It's bigger than Tesla, Meta, even silver. It's getting close to Amazon and Alphabet. Imagine that if Bitcoin were a company, it'd be one of the most valuable in the world.
That's incredible. What does that mean for Bitcoin's price in the future?
Well, this level of market cap makes those huge price swings less likely. The bigger something is, the harder it is to move. It also shows a growing belief in Bitcoin's long-term value.
It really is amazing how far Bitcoin has come. You know that story about the guy who bought 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoins back in 2010?
Yeah, the legendary pizza purchase.
Well, today, that same amount of Bitcoin could buy you a majority stake in Papa John's International. Now that's return on investment.
It's a perfect example of Bitcoin's incredible growth. And it reminds us of its potential, but also its unpredictability.
And yet here we are, talking about a future where Bitcoin might actually be stable.
Yeah, it's an interesting paradox. This asset that was once all about volatility is showing signs of becoming something much more predictable.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. What could mess up this whole Bitcoin is becoming stable idea?
There are always risks. Regulation's a big one. Governments are still figuring out how to deal with Bitcoin. A sudden policy change could scare investors and cause the price to drop.
So even with all these good signs, there's still a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely. Bitcoin's future is still being written. It's an experiment, a technological and financial revolution happening right now.
So what does all this mean for the average person? Hearing about Bitcoin hitting $100,000, wondering if they should get involved. Is it a good investment, a risky gamble, or somewhere in between?
That's the question everyone wants answered. And there's no simple answer. It depends on your personal situation, how much risk you're comfortable with, and what you're hoping to achieve with your investments. What we can do is give you the information you need to make informed decisions.
That's a perfect way to lead into the last part of our deep dive, where we'll look at some key things to think about for anyone considering investing in Bitcoin. We'll explore the potential rewards and the very real risks. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get a clearer picture of what this all means for the future of finance. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of stuff, this $100,000 milestone, all these big investors jumping in, even countries adopting Bitcoin. But let's get practical. What does all this mean for someone listening? Maybe they're curious about Bitcoin, but not sure about actually investing.
That's a smart question. It's important to look at this from all sides. On the one hand, Bitcoin has made some people a lot of money. It's the ultimate high-risk, high-reward asset.
Yeah, we've all heard those stories of early investors getting rich almost overnight, but there are also stories of people losing big. So how does the average person make sense of all this?
Well, that's where knowing your own risk tolerance comes in. Bitcoin is still volatile, even with all these institutions and a larger market cap. It's not for those who can't stomach some ups and downs. If you want a stable, predictable investment, there are probably safer options out there.
So it's not about timing the market perfectly. It's about understanding the risks and deciding if those risks fit your financial goals. But let's say someone is okay with some risk. What are some key things to think about before investing in Bitcoin?
I'd say focus on 3 things: education, security, and diversification. First, educate yourself. Don't invest just because everyone's talking about it. Understand the technology, the risks, the downsides.
Right. Don't invest in something you don't get. Solid advice. What about security?
Security is crucial. Remember, Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning you're responsible for protecting your own assets. Choose a good exchange, use strong passwords, consider a hardware wallet.
So it's about taking personal responsibility for your investments, not relying on a bank or a broker.
Exactly. It's a different way of thinking. And lastly, diversification. Never put all your eggs in one basket, especially with something as unpredictable as Bitcoin. A balanced portfolio is always the best approach.
Okay, so educate yourself, prioritize security, diversify your investments. It sounds like we're having a more mature conversation about Bitcoin now. It's less about getting rich quick and more about understanding its place in the changing financial world.
I think that's a great way to put it. As Bitcoin becomes more mainstream, it's crucial to approach it with a clear head and a healthy amount of skepticism. It's not a magic solution, but it is a fascinating and potentially transformative technology.
So where do we go from here? What's the next chapter in the Bitcoin story? Is this $100,000 mark the start of a new stable era, or are we in for another wild ride?
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, Bitcoin has the world's attention. It started a conversation about money, the role of technology in finance, and the future of the global economy.
It's a story that's still being written, and we're all watching to see what happens. I have a feeling this won't be the last time we deep dive into Bitcoin, but for now, we'll leave you with this. Stay curious, stay informed, and always do your own research before investing in anything.
And until next time, happy diving.